Well, welcome to everyone, all of our attendees participating tonight. We wanted to chat with you a little bit before the semester begins about our remote learning program, and Dr. Willis and Mr. Bala will do that. I just wanted to give a quick welcome, and please know that although you're not going to be on our campus for the fall semester, you are definitely in our thoughts and in our hearts as part of the Cushing community, and we want to make sure that we're communicating with you as much as possible about this online program and all that we are going to be doing to partner with you this semester to continue your learning here at Cushing Academy. So I'll ask Mr. Bala to share our slides, and I'll just give a quick update on, as I typically do, although you won't be coming to campus in the fall, I do want to continue to give you an update on the public health situation, as we hope to have you as soon as you can. Certainly we have a testing protocol in place that would allow students who are participating in our remote learning program to be able to enter, at various times, as long as you're able to follow our quarantine and our onboarding process with testing. So if there is a travel ban or a visa restriction in place that's keeping you from coming to campus, if that gets lifted, please know that we want to partner with you to do that and to allow you to be able to come to campus as soon as possible. One quick, I guess you have a technical difficulty. Patrick needs to give you screen sharing.
Yeah, working on being able to pull up the slide decks in your chart, Randy.
Great. I will say that our preparations on campus are continuing to go very smoothly. We are getting ready to welcome students on campus this Thursday and Friday. Our faculty and staff have been hard at work over the last few days preparing not only for our remote learning, but also our face-to-face instruction this fall. And here we go. Looks like we're ready.
There it is.
All right. So again, indicators from Massachusetts Department of Public Health. You've seen me present these since early May, looking at 7-day weighted average of our test rate. Massachusetts actually, after a little increase at the beginning of August, which made my heartbeat quicken a little bit, that continues to decrease since, I guess, August 5th, 6th, 7th. In that area, we're down to a 1.4 percentage rate. And actually in Ashburnham, it's much, much lower. We've had one positive test in the town of Ashburnham out of 150 in the last 2 weeks. So it's a 0.68 positive testing rate, which isn't reflected here, but I'd happen to look at that today. So, and then our 3-day average of patients in hospitals continuing to decrease, although that, decrease is sort of in a wave. You see some ups and downs, but, lowest value you can see on the charts, 359, and we're at 371, decreasing from, earlier at the end of last week, actually, to about 400. The hospital surge capacity is at 1, so that's a nice trend there. And 3-day average of deaths is at its lowest value, it looks like, ever during the pandemic. So very positive and encouraging news, not only for those returning to campus, but for everyone here tonight. Hopefully this trend continues and we can get you back to Ashburnham as soon as possible. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bala and Dr. Willis for the majority of the presentation tonight. I'll help moderate questions and answers and also answer those questions as I can, but want to turn it over and let them talk to you about what the fall is going to look like for everyone here tonight participating remotely. So Dr. Willis, Mr. Bala.
Thanks, Dr. Burton. I'm going to back up to our opening slide just for a second. As I welcome everyone, Dr. Willis and I were watching the list of participants steadily grow over the last 15-ish minutes or so, and it's just absolutely great to see so many familiar names popping up there from students. Noah, I know you're watching. One of my advisees, especially happy to see that you are on the call tonight. And the title slide and in the email communication that went out, we've continued to talk about the notion of remote learning and recognizing that a significant portion, an important part of our community is remote at this point. But the reality is that remote learning is accurate in many senses, but at the same time, the actual new chapter of our approach actually revolves around what we are calling, what's been otherwise termed as concurrent learning. And I think that's important to point out the difference, because knowing that we have students that are returning, in combination with so many new families that we're welcoming new students, our returning students have some familiarity in terms of what our approach looked like in the spring. But everybody is going to be experiencing something new come Monday, and the primary difference is that, and the definition or basic underlying concept of concurrent learning is that we're now trying to merge two different audiences. And so previously we were all sort of participating from afar via Zoom, but now part of our population is on campus, and that will change the dynamic for teachers, and it will change the classroom dynamic, hopefully in positive ways. There will be a learning curve, but it's something that we just want to recognize up front that will be different. That said, one of the ideas when we first made the transition to remote learning, in its purest sense in the spring, is this was our mantra amongst the faculty, really prioritizing engagement, and recognizing the need and importance of participation and structure, and trying to find ways to maintain our sense of community, and to maintain that sense of connection while we were all spread apart. And so engagement is still the overarching goal in terms of making sure that while you are away, that you are still engaged in a stimulating learning experience, and that we are ultimately preparing you for when you come back to campus. Similar themes that have continued to guide our approach from start to finish include accessibility, and again, thinking about what the differences are between the way that this learning environment looks like and what it did in the spring, and making sure that the technology enhancements that we are using are still accessible for those that are not on campus, and actually can potentially even improve the experience that at least returning students had in the spring, and then making sure that again we are all of our teachers are available to support different issues that come up, and then also recognizing again the difference between now the control that we have in terms of the resources that are available for students on campus is just fundamentally different than resources that are available to you off campus, and there are trade-offs in both directions in terms of what that looks like, and I'll circle back to that towards the end of the slide deck. All of that said, flexibility remains fundamental, and we will continue to work with you individually as your circumstances change, and the importance of communication there is going to be really important in terms of helping us help you to make this experience be as optimal as it can be. This is a slide that, if you've tuned into previous webinars, that we've talked about before, but I think in the context of what we're trying to highlight tonight about our approach, it's worth returning to and approaching from a slightly different lens that's a little bit more specific to your situation. And so the continuity of learning has always been a priority, and we've talked about what that looks like in general terms of day to day, week to week, and semester to semester. In the context of those of you that are starting the year remotely, this is especially important because we want to make sure that when you come back to campus, that transition is as seamless as possible. And so making sure that everything that we've created structurally supports your transition back, whether and that includes through winterim in some cases, and then when we're finally hopefully all able to be back in one place come the spring. The cognitive overload that we've talked about that is real for everyone is also a little bit different for many of you in terms of what learning through and via a screen looks like. And so our daily schedule has continued to try to take that into account, to provide those opportunities for movement breaks, to be able to step away from your screen, so that when you are participating in a synchronous class, that you're able to be as fully present as possible, and therefore the learning opportunities will be as meaningful as possible. The staggered concept that I've talked about previously is designed to allow opportunities to catch up. So if you were to fall behind for whatever reason, there are more built-in windows over the course of the fall semester where you will have the ability to sort of regain your footing and start to gain some traction in terms of being able to get caught up and move forward. Again, coming back to that idea of being ready for when you're able to return. The idea of asynchronous learning also looks a little bit different for you, since a lot of those of you in 12-hour, 13-hour time differences are going to have to do some of your classwork asynchronously, but we've preserved an element of asynchronous learning for everybody. So even those students that are on campus still have weekly asynchronous class time. And we believe in the pedagogy behind that, and the ways that we can use those opportunities to enhance what's happening in the classroom. But that's also in recognition of the ways in which we are asking you to engage and keep up on a weekly basis. The modular design will look familiar in many ways, and your individual teachers will sort of reframe how they're approaching what that looks like in each of their classes. And then lastly, something that we'll also come back to in a little bit more depth is we've really looked at different technology options to provide that bridge, and understanding again that concurrent learning looks different than remote learning. And so everything that we have made decisions around revolves around the goal of being able to combine those two different experiences, and to try to maximize your engagement and therefore increase those learning outcomes. So getting into sort of the more specifics of the experience and what it will be like for you as a student, we're going to highlight certain aspects that roughly revolve around technology, very specifically around textbook, and then more holistically around supports. But again, I just want to be clear from the beginning that this is uncharted territory for us, and we are all diving in together. In any given sort of orientation or work that we would do leading into the start of classes, we would always talk about boarding school being an experience where students are the driver, and that sense of self-agency. And returning students give the advice all the time about this experience will be what you make of it, and putting yourself out there and seeking out those opportunities, and all of that still remains incredibly true for you in your different circumstances. And so being able to self-advocate, to continue those connections with classmates, with teachers, with advisors, to really just sort of dive into this experience and be able to articulate what's working well and what's not as you go, we're going to go through the parameters, but again, that's sort of the mindset that we are hopeful that, again, another theme of things that we'll talk about tonight is partnership. But so thinking about ways in which that we can work together to make this work. So starting with sort of the nuts and bolts, this is really student oriented here in terms of our learning management system and my Cushing. That will be the hub. That's where you'll have access to all of your class pages, your schedules, your homework, resources that your teachers post. And so a lot of you have already participated in the virtual orientation that's been running for the last few weeks. And I want to just highlight some of the slides that that one of our students put together, just in case you are seeing this for the first time, because all of this lives within my Cushing and you have access to it right now. And so whether it's before classes start or whatever the time frame works, this is a really good resource that I want to highlight quickly. So like I said, our learning management system is called my Cushing. There were some instructions that were sent to you via email about how to log in. Some of the different screens that you'll see within my Cushing, progress tab, your class page. Each of your classes will look something like this. These are some screenshots from the spring. And again, this sort of gives you a sense of like what the different modules will look like, or the different ways that your teachers will be organizing content. The daily schedule exists there, your assignment center, which is where all of your homework will be posted, the calendar, so being able to think about what things look like on a daily basis, and then week to week, and then monthly as we march through the 13 weeks, and then also resources, directories, different ways to get in contact with other people. And then again, in the theme of emphasizing communication, there's also this messaging feature that exists within my Cushing. That's an easy way to get a hold of anyone within the community. So all this slide deck exists on the virtual orientation page, along with the recording of that actual session. So for any reason you were unable to participate, I would encourage you to check that out for some additional information. Another page that I do want to highlight a little bit more specifically within my Cushing is the Bulletin Board. And so this will be your landing place when you go to any class. And this is where you will also have all of your Zoom links posted for how to access your classes. So it's as simple as clicking on that link and you'll be taken to class, and your teachers will have all of this lined up for you in advance. So you can import it into your calendars or whatever your organizational system is, but this will be the central location in terms of access to class, and then again, access to all the resources that your teachers are providing for you. And that will include textbooks. Just as we did in the spring, we will provide PDFs of your textbooks so that you have them right away. We will also work to get, Cushing has a recent tradition of making sure that students have all the resources and books that they'll need. And so your textbooks will be accessible in PDF form, but we will work with you to get any paperbacks also to you. But in the beginning, especially while schedules are in flux, those will also exist in PDF form, so that you don't need to worry about any of that, and again, all of this will be housed within My Cushing. So that's sort of your central go-to. It will become second nature within no time. And in terms of what the more dynamic experience will be, and the ways in which it looks a little bit different from the spring, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Willis at this point to talk about some of the technology that we researched and how we ended up here.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Bala. Hello, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. We're happy that you are joining this webinar and have the chance to talk together about what the fall is going to look like and feel like, and certainly want to continue to emphasize the points that Mr. Bala has been bringing up as we move into talking about technology and a few other pieces. But I get a couple of fun slides here as we think about technology and this pretty cool piece of technology that we have come to know about this summer, know a bit better, called the Meeting Owl Pro. We looked at a few different pieces of technology. We tapped some of our faculty members to try them out, gather feedback, and quite honestly, the Meeting Owl Pro clear choice for us. And a parliament of owls, which is what you call a group of owls, has arrived to campus. They are ready to be in classrooms. And so we're really eager to utilize this as we think about that concurrent learning. So this is a glimpse at it on the screen. As you'll see, we have a link here to a brief video that gives you a little bit more of, of a look at it in motion. So Mr. Ball is going to play that for us.
Recognize that college is going to look a little different this fall. We're social distancing our classrooms and putting technology in place to help create a flexible but quality academic experience. Meet Owl, the new 360-degree camera that will be available in many of our classrooms. With smart technology, Owl follows the voice of professors and students and creates a split-screen video view of the classroom. If a student can't attend class due to illness or quarantine, when they join via Zoom, they'll be better integrated into the classroom discussion and experience. We're working hard to provide you with the best experience possible. It will look different, but it's still JVU.
Thank you. So obviously that comes from John Brown University, and we have utilized that a couple of times, and soon we'll have lots of our own sort of video examples of what it's going to look like in our classroom. But that's a helpful one because it has students in there, it has the teacher up front, the masks are on, it's going to look pretty familiar to what you'll see. So, I think that a couple of those pieces to highlight in terms of the ability of the Meeting Owl Pro to really provide a full look at the classroom. We had talked about wanting to avoid something that was really teacher-centric, only looking sort of at one specific place at a time, and really wanting to pull you all into the classroom with as many views as possible. And so you see the split screen feature. You can also see the panoramic view up top, where really you can see almost a complete 360. We found one hiding point where you can just kind of hide right where the screens touch, but it gives you this really wonderful view, and you'll be able to see your classmates in the classroom as well as classmates who are also attending via Zoom along that side. The integration into Zoom is another really wonderful feature for us in thinking about bringing this without adding too much to that same cognitive load that Mr. Bala was talking about. And so this is fully integrated with Zoom, which is the platform that we have been utilizing since March and have found to be a really helpful platform for us. And so what you see here are some screenshots with Mr. Michael, who may be a familiar face to some of you. And then in the one shot you see, I'm featured in there as well as Miss Michael, and we have been his remote class in this example. And so we have appreciated the help of our faculty in selecting this technology and have wanted to make sure that it felt really usable to them, but really centering on what we thought would deliver you the best experience as remote learners. Shifting a little bit as we think about what you can expect and what we're hoping to look for from you as students in the remote learning environment. Many of these lessons are things that we know, well from the spring, and that whether you are here or elsewhere during the spring, some of these will probably feel familiar to you. And so we want to talk together about this idea of establishing and maintaining some kind of daily routine, a consistent time to wake up, to have, a first meal, any medications. All of these things are going to just support the ability to be punctual, to feel prepared, to just have that sense of rhythm that we know can really support success and help you build momentum. Continuing the theme of communication, which I think is one of these top things that we want to be paying attention to. Utilizing Gmail as a platform that we do use for communication, and so working to use that. And my Cushing is also going to be a feature that we'll be relying on. The messages in particular are a great way to stay in touch. And so in particular, thinking about communication with your teachers, whether that's about specific assignments or questions that may have come up, and really anything that you need. Our teachers are always, but especially in this time, want to be incredibly available and responsive, making sure that you're getting the information that you need to feel connected to us here on campus. The third bullet point is some helpful information, and I think response to some questions that we have received just around this idea of expectations. And so participation being something that we're talking about, a requirement for commitments that are falling between 8 in the morning and 10 in the evening in your local time zone. And so wanting to sort of keep that as a good sense of boundary for you. We have had students opt into commitments that fall outside of those timeframes. And of course, you are welcome to participate in whatever makes sense for you, but we really want to value sleep and balance and all of these other pieces. And we have structures in place to support you for what may fall out of that time zone for you. And so in terms of expectations, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. your time zone is when we're going to be asking you to be participating in a synchronous manner with us. In terms of what that time will look like, or even the time that you may be doing some more asynchronous work, really working to find somewhere that's comfortable for you, someplace that can be quiet and promote effective engagement, participation on your end. And this is sort of a funny one to consider, but this idea about dressing for success as a way, again, it can cue you into sort of your identity as a student, your habits around work. And so we do encourage you to sort of think about that factor, and that may look or feel different for folks. We're going to talk, I think, on the next slide a little bit more clearly around that, but this idea about sort of dressing for success. Minimizing distractions can be more challenging in a remote setting because you're not in that same classroom environment, and so there may be things around you that are harder to have full control over if you are in home, but we ask you to try to minimize those. Your phone is an example of something that you would have more control over in terms of finding a place to have that set aside when you're engaged in your classes. We will talk in a few slides here about our honor code, and certainly a very clear expectation on our end is that you maintain your commitment to the honor code, completing all of your assignments and assessments with honesty and integrity. And to underscore this, we will return to this later in the slides. An expectation, but also an invitation, is to be engaging with your advisor. If you have an academic support teacher, your academic dean, whether that's Mr. Bala or myself or Mr. Stone out of the academic office, other identified trusted adults in the community, really both inviting you and also expecting you to utilize us. We are here for you and really eager to partner with you throughout the fall. And then we have this email address here. If you're experiencing any technical problems, this virtualclassrooms@cushing.org is a really great resource for you and can get you some pretty quick responses here to help problem solve. We've got a few folks who partner in that and can probably tackle any question you're going to send at us. So those are some expectations to consider. We're going to talk a little bit now about the etiquette around participating through the virtual classroom and thinking about videos in particular. We do have an expectation for students to have video enabled during classes. We can continue to talk about this and even look at an image, but there's just no question it enhances engagement. It just adds to the experience of all of the students and really supports that class experience. And so we do have that expectation. we ask folks to mute microphones. Most of us have been in enough meetings at this point in time that you've probably, Dr. Burton, muting your mic. Yeah. But so that is,
sorry.
no, not at all. But that is something that we ask for as you enter into classrooms. There will be lots of times where you are unmuted and participating actively, but it can just help with sort of other noise that may be going on in the background. And so responding to teacher prompts around muting, pinning and hand raising, which if you have not spent a lot of time on Zoom, those things will be covered at the start here to make sure that you're familiar. And then thinking about this do not disturb feature on our computers, that is very, very helpful in avoiding some of those interruptions that pop up. And so again, allowing us to be really fully engaged in what's happening around us, getting rid of those extra tabs as well. When we think about video safety, which is a different angle here, at times when you're able to create videos and have that, make sure that you're in a space that's quiet, limiting distractions, and then thinking about keeping doors open when you're on a video call or making a video so that family members can really feel aware of what's going on. They don't necessarily need to be right in there with you, but we don't want it to feel like something that's separate or unfamiliar. And so having that accessibility makes a lot of sense. As we think about backgrounds, both sort of real life or virtual, thinking about a simple approach there, something that is appropriate and not overly cluttered. And then coming back to this idea about sort of how we show up with our clothing. I'm very aware I'm not in a blazer tonight. I'm sticking out here, but having it be something that feels appropriate for school attire and to minimize or not minimize, but make sure that no offensive graphics are included in that as well. We will be recording classes, but certainly one-on-one video calls are recorded as a common practice just by Cushing as an institution. This is a fun image, just sort of thinking about that experience of when you're in the room and everybody's video is on, and just how that can promote the kind of connection and the kind of participation and just those sort of good feelings that can come up. And so for me, just to look at this slide, which came from obviously a meeting this summer with Mr. Doyon and Ms. Stoyan there, it's a great reminder of just the energy that can come in the room when folks have the video on and are using it appropriately. So I love this slide.
The other thing that slide shows too, again, that was part of a virtual orientation, is when things are working really well together. And so we want to sort of wrap things up, and we'll get to the Q&A portion of the evening pretty quickly, but just really reinforcing this idea of partnership. That's fundamental to all of the relationships that we're looking to forge with families under normal circumstances, but there's a different dynamic that it takes when we're sharing that time with families. And so those roles look a little bit different, but the other half of partnership that we keep coming back to is communication. And so understanding the sort of trifecta that exists between the school, the student, and then parents, and the way that all three of those individual relationships intersect with one another in ways that can really shape what this overall experience looks like. Along those lines, some of the things.
Oh,
you froze there. Right?
Opposed to with us.
Mr. Bala, we lost you there for a minute.
Okay.
You froze mostly right at the top of the slide, and so you may just want to jump back in.
So understanding that things are, thank you, a little bit different in terms of what what that experience is like when we have full control of students being on campus versus some of that shared responsibility when students are, or your children are home with you. And so partnering in some of those ideals that Dr. Willis talked about in terms of routines and encouraging that sort of sense of that spirit of participating in classes, even things like dress and all of those aspects. And we're here to help you have those conversations as well. And so your student or your child's advisor is central in all of that as a starting point, and then the resources start to layer out from there. And the advisor is a good first step that can put you in contact with any of us or other people on campus, but that two-way dialogue is just really, really essential. At the same time, there is this element of independence, and again, that idea of self-agency that we keep coming back to as well. And that's again where the dialogue helps to shape what that really looks like. So some of the just sort of quick touch points. We've talked a lot about just how you're presenting yourself on camera, your body posture, movement, all of those things remain really important in terms of promoting that idea of engagement that we also keep coming back to, getting into those routines, reaching out outside of class to friends, to teachers, to advisors. All of those connections are really important. And then Dr. Willis already talked about it once, but sleep is really important. We know some of you made a 7-week commitment to potentially stay up all night to keep up with your classes, and that worked to some extent in that shorter window of time, but this is a longer window. And so being able to sustain your approach and your endurance, we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we have those release valves built in. But sleep is going to be really important in terms of maintaining your ability to be engaged and to stay healthy as well. So I want to end by talking a little bit about the honor code. And this comes back to the idea of equity of resources that I alluded to in the very beginning, because it's just fundamentally different in both directions. So for students that are on campus, teachers have a little bit more control over what resources they have available to them, whether it's when we turn off the internet at night or what they're able to oversee in class. There are limitations that students on campus face. For those of you that are away, there are also limitations in terms of, if you're having to share bandwidth with other family members or whatever circumstances are going on in your own situation, that could have a limiting effect. At the same time, you also have in some senses more resources that are potentially at your disposal. And so really trying to hit home on that idea of partnership. We all share that same goal of what learning should look like and what authentic learning should look like. And so the idea of authentic learning really means approaching the work that's being asked of you from the standpoint of your teachers really wanting to see what it is that you're learning, where you're at, so they can provide that support. And so any shortcuts around that that could fall into the realm of academic dishonesty, we hope that we can sort of avoid going down that road in all senses. And so there is extra responsibility for you. We understand the temptation that exists, but it really defeats the spirit in which we're trying to, again, partner with you in terms of helping you to become the best student that you can be, help you reach those goals that exist beyond Cushing, and really build that foundation for the expectations that you'll need to be successful in college and beyond. And so this is something that we will continue to come back to. Your teachers will talk about this individually in all of their classes and in individual assignments, but this is a really important part of Cushing's how we talk about Learning, who we are as an institution. This was something that was actually created by students. This entire wording, the document itself, and even the initiative to go to an honor code was student driven. And so we want to end there and just try to make sure that we are really in this together and making the best of the situation for what it is, and every day, every week, trying to improve upon it in ways that we can. So thank you for listening to all of that, and we will turn it over to some questions and answers now.
Oh, got to come off mute here, I think. Both you and I.
Oh, look at that. Sorry, I already messed it up twice. Thanks for the presentation. Looks like we have a couple of questions. First one, do we have to attend every class according to Eastern time? Because there's 12-hour difference between where I am in China and Massachusetts.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. No, so the 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. time relates to your local time zone, wherever that may be. And so we want you to be, as Mr. Bala was talking about, we want you to have good routines, good habits, good sleep. And so between your 8 a.m. and your 10 p.m., whatever commitments fall within then, we do ask you to come and be present. And then outside of that, no, please rest.
Great, thank you. Question, will the daily schedule come out soon?
The daily schedule is very, very close. We're just working on the graphics just a tiny bit. If you've seen previous webinars, it looks, the structure of it is identical, and it will be up in the next day or two. As simple and straightforward as possible.
Great. Another question, will all the classes be recorded?
Yes.
I think this is for, can I access it asynchronously later, maybe? Is that, I think, the intent of the question? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the part of the beauty of the OWL and the integration with Zoom is it really allows us to record very easily. And when Mr. Bala was showing some of the My Cushing page, that will be where there will be links for students to find any live class that they weren't able to attend. So yes, those recordings will be consistently done, and they will be consistently available to you as well.
Super, thank you. A question about textbooks. When and how are we able to access our textbooks? I think you spoke a little bit about that tonight. Maybe clarify that.
Yeah, so the quickest way that we're going to be able to get textbooks into your hands is through the PDFs that your teachers will provide to you and then continue to provide throughout the semester. But if there's anybody that wants to get a physical textbook in their hands, we can share ISBN information, and you can work to order one on your own so that you have it. And if that's easier for any reason, that's entirely possible. We also recognize some of the fluctuation that happens in the beginning of the year with schedule changes and ad drop. And so we also want to make sure that specifically in terms of those paperbacks, that what we get you will actually serve you for the duration of the fall and not have to be in this sort of cycle of back and forth where you don't have the resources that you need. So at the outset, electronic and PDF versions are going to be the most accessible way, but there's certainly some other options that you can explore on your own or with help from us.
Great, thank you. I can take this one. Do we have to submit the newest COVID test result on My Cushing if we are not coming back to campus? The answer is you do not have to submit that if you're not coming back to campus. However, when you are ready to come back to campus or able to come back to campus, we would take it at that time and onboard you according to our testing strategy, which is a pre-test, the test on arrival, and after. But we would work with you individually with your family. So for now, if you're starting online, don't worry about that. I know Magnus Health is probably sending you a daily reminder saying you have an incomplete item, so you can always communicate with the health center, which is healthcenter@cushing.org, and they can make sure to note that So we can mark in our health system that you are indeed participating remotely and don't need that test yet. But everyone else who comes to campus does need it.
Randy, could I touch upon Warren's question about testing and quizzing? It's a really good one. I'm not surprised, Warren, a student with your savviness, that you would be able to anticipate that will also look a little bit different. And I'm going to start by speaking a little bit more to returning students who have a different context, but hopefully the basic ideas will translate. So in the spring, we very deliberately changed a lot of our approach to grading and assessment. And so there were exit tickets, and there was an engagement grade, and there were projects. You will see elements of all of that, and that was a really good learning experience for our faculty, but that situation required a different approach than the one that we are entering. And so your teachers are highly aware of the challenges that will exist, again, with that idea of concurrent learning, where some students are in class and some students are remote. And so as we've talked about as a faculty, what assessment looks like, there are going to be different strategies and different methods of assessment that will be used at different times. But there will be tests and there will be quizzes as there used to be, and your teachers are having to anticipate and prepare for how that will look in terms of those students that are not physically on campus. And that's one of the reasons why I did want to take the opportunity to touch upon the honor code and the importance of authentic learning. Again, expectations are just going to be a little bit different. We were at the end of the year. We wanted to make sure that we finished achieving those learning outcomes that we had identified at the beginning of the year. And we've got to do a lot of building to get towards the end. And so that's why we're really trying to highlight the importance of being engaged and having that look a little bit different than it did in the fall, in terms of having your videos on anytime that you're participating in a synchronous class. And some of the places where we let some things slide a little bit, just because we wanted to make sure that we were capturing as much engagement as possible, but the expectations will be a little bit more encompassing than they were in the fall. And so bridging some of that traditional elements of what things used to look like, and utilizing things that we learned in the spring, and then all kinds of professional development that your teachers have done over the course of the summer, to be able to really be prepared for the different dynamics that will exist. And then lastly, I will also add, while we've talked a lot about Google in some way, we've also been able to identify several new resources technologically, apps, etc., that are also assessment tools. And so be prepared to see some things that you haven't seen before, and have that sort of be additionally ways that your teachers are trying to capture and celebrate what authentic learning looks like in this new environment.
Great, thank you. Here's a question probably that comes down to the staggered schedule. It says, when do classes start? I thought that classes started in August, but an email I received for AP Lit says we have our first meeting in September.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Dr. Burton. So, and this is even a little bit different because there's two sections of AP Lit. There's a BC section that will start on Monday, the 24th, and there's a DE section that will actually start 2 weeks later. So depending on when your classes fall and what periods, the staggered approach that Dr. Burton was referring to, that I mentioned before, is that we have built in a little bit of of an interval approach in terms of when classes begin. So most of them start right away, but some of them will begin a week, 2 weeks behind, and then other classes will fall off that started first, and so the routine of each class is going to feel a little bit different, and this is ultimately, again, to help students keep up with expectations, but also it's going to avoid, and again, returning students, but even new students, you probably have felt this in your own academic lives. When everything is happening at the same time, there's always those moments within the fall where things always just sort of like stack up right before midterms, or different grading periods, whatever it is, where all of a sudden like everything is due at once. And so the staggered approach is also going to spread that out a little bit more, so that when you're involved in whatever combination of classes that you're in, you can really focus in on that and be as engaged as possible. So a lot of that, it probably still is not entirely clear and won't be until you start to experience it. But my Cushing will again, the schedule that exists within the My Day feature will help you sort of see what things are like on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And then we're also, we have a couple of different bi-weekly visuals of what that will look like, so that you can really start to see and map your way through the course of the fall.
Great, thank you. During the summer, I filled out a questionnaire about dorms. If, when possible, will the requested roommate neighbor's dorm be considered? And I think what we'll say is we'll do our best to accommodate requests that you had. Certainly everybody who's on campus for the fall semesters in a single room in campus is full, with all rooms, so we've had to shift. Certainly in the second semester, in 2021, if we're able to repopulate campus in a way that has a greater density than it does now, we'll try to fulfill those requests, but also know that we're all going to need to be flexible to create the most healthy and safe environment possible. All right.
Looks like there's a study hall question that I can.
Yeah, you want to take that one?
Which is again, that's kind of an exciting question to especially for a new student, Linnea, who hasn't even experienced what study hall used to look like. Study hall on campus is going to look different than it used to, but for your purposes, again, this is where that independence and partnership with your parents is sort of seeded back to you in a different way. And this is also where we have intentionally kept those asynchronous classes. And so when I talk about asynchronous classes, I mean where your teachers in all of your classes will have at least one period a week that is structured in a way that you're able to experience that on your own, independently. It's not happening with other students concurrently. And so being able to do some of that at night to figure out like when are those windows that work for you. And so students that are studying remotely have even a little bit more opportunity to sort of spread things out in ways that work for their schedules, their time zones, their circumstances. And you'll start to see, again, with the staggered schedule, where those pockets of free time exist. And so if you need help managing that, again, your teachers, your advisors, we are here for you. But otherwise, there really is a lot of independence in terms of how you're doing work and when, until you come back to campus in the spring. And then we go back to that sort of more traditional 8 to 10 o'clock study hall. But for now, we're hoping that you're really building some strong study skills and habits of mind that will support that transition back to campus when it comes.
Question about the PSAT. Is the PSAT offered remotely?
That's a good question. The PSAT should be offered via testing centers, but we can get some more specific information to you via college counseling about what that will look like or what those options might be. Did you get a name for that question?
There's not a name on that. So if you did ask that question, it was asked in the Q&A and not in the chat. So maybe you can send us a chat privately, or Mr. Bala and Dr. Willis a chat privately, and we'll get that answered for you. What percentage of students will be on campus versus online? We have about 30 to 35% online. Looks like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and just there's a question in here about communicating with teachers and classmates, and the sort of angle of it seems concerned about that not being an option. And I want to reiterate that that will be an option and a few different avenues for that. So the Meeting Owl Pro with Zoom, to the extent to which you're able to join that synchronous class, there is that opportunity to really engage in that live moment. So the folks on Zoom can interact, and the folks in the classroom, the live classroom here on campus, can see them. And so with technology, as we've all experienced, even just in that last moment with Dr. Burton and myself, like there may be that timing that we're figuring out as we're managing those two environments, but there's absolutely going to be opportunity for interaction with classmates, interactions with teachers. There are also a variety of synchronous and asynchronous ways through discussion boards and other group projects that we do definitely want to center relationships and continue to develop those both with your classmates and with your teachers, extra help opportunities, and then other things like advisory and other groupings there that will keep you connected to your classmates, to the adults on campus with whom you've developed relationships and or will begin to over the course of the time. So I was happy to see that one, and that it gave me a chance to kind of clarify some of the different ways that we will be able to stay connected over the course of the coming weeks and months.
Great. Thank you. Looks like we have time for just 2 more questions. We want to try to keep it to an hour when we do these webinars. Certainly, you can always reach us individually on email. I think everyone at this point has the ability to contact us. You can write something in the chat, and we'll be sure to follow up. One easy one that I can take: when do we find out who our roommate is? Well, if you're coming to campus, you probably shouldn't be on this Zoom, because you won't be participating remotely. You'll be participating live. But if you are coming to campus, we'll all be in singles. So that's an easy answer there. And then the second one, maybe a little bit more detailed. And I know you explained it in the presentation, but where's the record of classes for us to watch? And this could be from a new student for Mike Cushing, wanting to learn a little bit about that. Is it directly delivered to us? Could you please answer with more details?
Yeah, so absolutely. My Cushing, if it's not a tool that you are familiar with, it will become a friend soon, shortly. And that will happen. You'll have opportunities with your advisor to become more familiar with it, as well as in your classrooms with your teachers. So nobody would be expecting you to arrive as a My Cushing expert. There will be lots of chances to practice and learn. But most of the recordings will be, you can find them under the topics page frequently is sort of the specific answer. I'm not sure in this context how helpful that level of specificity will be unless you are pulling up My Cushing at this point and kind of able to look on that with me, but it's not anything that you will need to know until your teacher has directed you there. And at that point, part of the beauty of screen sharing and screenshots and all of that technology is we'll be able to walk you through that piece by piece, step by step as well.
Great. Okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate you joining us remotely this fall. Know that we hope that you'll be on campus with us soon. And again, feel free to reach out to us individually with additional questions. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.